So you mentioned working with local psychologists, and by no means am I asking you to share names, but what was that approach that made you feel it didn't resonate?
We had a very good experience with the psychologist here in town. She was very accommodating in terms of assessing Josiah. So she met us at a park because we told her he will not speak to you if we bring him to your office. And so, but we told her if he's outdoors and if you're like just a random stranger, he'll talk to you. And so that's what we did. We set it up that she was sort of like this nice lady that he met in the park that he chatted with. And she did a wonderful job of assessing him. And then she met us at our home, and you could see a shift there. So he still was verbal with her, but pulled back a lot, and had some of those behaviors where he didn't want to follow instruction. His volume was much softer, and the longer she was there and the more he sort of put it together, like, this was a trick, you weren't just a nice lady that I met. He began to treat her more like an authority figure, like he did his teachers at school. And so we had a great experience assessing him. I think she did a great job recognizing that it was selective mutism and not any of the many other things it could have been. But it wasn't her specialty area. Right. And there wasn't anyone in town that this was their specialty area. And
so was he about 4 at this point, or was he?
At this point, it's like the spring of his pre-K year, and he's 4 years old. And let me see, he probably turned 5 in December. And so this would be the spring after that.
So how old is he now for our listeners?
He's now 8.
Okay.
And will be 9 in December. Yeah.
So was there an effect with COVID that made, the adults and authority figures a challenge?
Absolutely.
For him? Yeah.
Absolutely.
So it's interesting that you brought it up because about like how he was with authority figures. I have found in my practice that we see a lot of kids, or had seen, it seems like it's evening out now. It's getting, because some of the 3-year-olds, or 4-year-olds that we're seeing, that's where we're seeing it, where it's like, don't go, 4 years ago was COVID, right?
Yeah.
5 years ago was COVID, and then lasted 2 years basically of don't go near that person, stay 6 feet, be careful.
Absolutely.
And so we did see this kind of difficulty with adult figures, almost like afraid. And very, very over-connected to parents because that was their safety measure. Don't go near them. Stay 6 feet. And then the mask, which protected their face. And so seeing facial expressions, it's like you're looking at people through their eyes instead of seeing that welcoming face that invited children to be okay with them. Instead, they saw eyes. And then if you didn't have interaction with peers, we saw it with peers. But the biggest influence was adults, and the inability to even engage with a lot of adults that these children didn't know. So was there an effect with that, do you feel?
Absolutely. I even sort of think that COVID was part of what initiated his mutism, that Josiah is very smart. And so when everyone's masked, you can't really understand anybody, right?
No.
Fully. And so I think that enabled him to use gestures and for that to be the norm, so that he's wearing a mask and he learned how to point at things and to communicate non-verbally so that he didn't need to speak. And so I think that was a big part of it. I also do think that added to his anxiety, that he couldn't read other people's facial expressions. He couldn't understand them clearly. His preschool teacher talked about kind of getting in the corner with him and having him pull his mask down. Yeah. Just to try to get him to talk to her. But as we know now from the Smart Center, sort of the harder you press in on that child and try to get them to speak, the more and more they're going to withdraw and shut down.
Yeah.
And so we didn't know that the things we were doing were making it worse.
Right. No, that totally makes sense, because maybe the comfort, the connection wasn't there. And then we were pushing to speak too quickly without realizing, wait, if we just take a step back, build that connection, build that comfortability, that will help. So, take me back to the time you attended CommuniCamp. That was your first experience, right? So What were some of the moments you thought, wow, this makes sense? It's always interesting for me to hear this. What was it about CommuniCamp that stood out for you?
Well, so, like I said, I'm here in Wilmington, North Carolina, but I'm a psychologist, and there's something that my kid needs help with. And so I'm going to find, and there's no one locally. So I'm going to find like the best place that I can find for him. And so I went on Dr. Google and just searched and searched and searched to try to find the right fit. And I found, this camp for kids with selective mutism that, he could do the summer before he went into kindergarten. And it was, the stars aligned for us. And we went through the assessment process. It was very thorough, and it helped us to realize that it wasn't just mutism, but that he also has social anxiety. And so those two things were really working against him. And then, we got to the CommuniCamp, and I always joke with people that it's the quietest camp you'll ever go to, so it's full of kids, and you walk by the classrooms and they're full, but they're very, very quiet.
At the start,
At the beginning. And yes, at the beginning.
Yes, the very beginning, sure. The first night, a lot of quietness, but it really changes.
And I think that's true for the parents too.
Yes.
When we first get there, we're all sitting there terrified. And then you start looking around at these people that are going through the same thing you're going through. And you've never had that before as a parent, like this feels like such an isolating issue that I don't think it's all that rare, but I think it's rarely diagnosed. I think it's rarely understood. Yeah. As we've been through this process and we've shared with people what we've gone through, I can't tell you how many people have said, I think that my child might be going through that too. And so, so that was a huge part of it, was the connections that we made. In terms of the camp itself, one of the things that was really moving as a parent was the patience that these clinicians had with my child, because it is exhausting to have a child that refuses to walk through the door of the classroom. Right? It's exhausting as a parent. It's exhausting as a teacher, but they weren't exhausted. They knew what they were getting into, and they met him where he was. In his class, in the CommuniCamp, he was the last one in his class to speak. And he even, he was whispering outside on the playground to a friend. So that was his crossing of the bridge. And it took until the very last day of camp for him to do that, just to give you a sense of how significant his mutism was. They used props. So the telephone was one of his favorites. So to have something for him to be able to speak through instead of having to directly speak to someone face to face. And we learned about the communication bridge, which was, that was life-changing for me, for us as a family. I learned so much from that. And then I brought it home with us, and I taught it to every person in his life, because it helped. It was like this mystery that we just decoded, and now it all makes sense. Well, and
I love hearing this, because everything you're saying is exactly what I want families to feel. Like, there's a couple things you said. You said to me about how it was quiet in the beginning, right? And understanding that that's not, did you speak, are you going to speak, but just accept where they're at to help them feel connected. But with adults, one of the things I say the very first day on Saturday morning when I start to speak, you come Friday night for comfort and connection to see where you're going to be. It helps lower the anxiety, who's going to be your counselor, who's in your group. But I tell people it's like a pin could drop. Everyone's sitting there, many of them flat affect, kind of nervous. But usually we set you up for lunch, you're connected. But as the days go on, as the hours go on, and we come back after breaks, it's like, we got to get you to, hey guys, calm down. Hey, I'm here. Whoa. To get you guys connected to us, because now you've made friends. You know what I mean? You've met people, you've connected over something of interest, of a commonality. And so we help you realize what our kids go through. And so to give you those tools to realize, whoa, I came to this camp. I'm not that quote unquote shy. I don't know anyone. How can I just talk to somebody unless you have a reason to, unless there's a connection?